Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Lincoln Journal-Star's Four Downs. Luke Mullin and Wilson Moore coming at you from Memorial Stadium, where the Huskers now in their second week of fall practice. Today we got the chance to hear a little bit more from the secondary, special teams units, obviously important parts of the team. And one of the things that stood out, Isaac Gifford, a guy who last year worked at nickel, kind of played all over. It seems like he's really grown into his own back there in the secondary and being a leader for this team.
Yeah, when we talked to Matt Rule a couple days ago, he described him as the alpha of the secondary. I think that was a good way of putting it. This is kind of his group. He's gone into year 4. He's a leader. He's been around, and especially for a secondary that has it's a big room. And it's got a real mix of guys who have been around, new guys, and especially with Miles Farmer entering the transfer portal now, it needed someone to kind of step up into that leadership role, a veteran. It seems like Isaac Gifford's been the guy.
Yeah, and what I really like is, we've heard defensive coordinator Tony White talk about this Husker speed. He wants guys going sideline to sideline, vertically. I mean, Gifford, that's been his main strength, just his ability to range around, get to plays. So clearly, they believe in him as a playmaker there on the back end of the defense. But also a focus on special teams today, where there's a few uncertainties and a few givens. And one of those certainties is punter Brian Buschini, a guy who battled through injuries. Today he said I think he dislocated his ankle 3 times or something like that, which first off, ow, that would hurt. So credit to him for getting out there and, punting through it all. But, talking about the offseason work that he's put in, Buschini, it's clear, how much work he puts into this craft, the details. He said he's been walking up and down, the dorm halls, practicing his plants, how he's going to connect with the ball. So clearly, I think, you hear Ed Foley talk about what he wants out of the special teams unit. Buschini is just as certain of a certainty as you're going to get back there. Once again, back as the starting punter. Lots of excitement from him settling into that role once again. But you look at the flip side, the other spot back there, the kicker competition. You got Timmy Bleekrode, who was pretty dependable, not a major contributor there on field goals, really dependable on the extra points. And freshman Tristan Alvano coming in. And so we heard from Bleekrode today, it's a tough spot for him, a guy coming in who wants to take his spot. But I think that what stood out to me is that they're in good spirits, they welcome the competition, and they're being good teammates to each other.
Yeah, and a kicker competition is always real interesting because it's pretty objective. And Ed Foley was making this point when we were talking to him that, there's not a lot of evaluation that goes into it. There's not a lot of, what someone can do technically. It's really just who makes more field goals, who has a higher percentage. So it makes for a more interesting but also more obvious competition, kind of down the stretch and going into that Minnesota game of who will be kicking for Nebraska.
Yeah, and what we saw from a brief bit of open practice last week, we saw Bleekrode and Alvano, both nailing within 45 yards. They're going back to 50. That's kind of where the real competition, I think, is, those tough kicks, the ones that the games are going to come down to. So that's something we'll continue to monitor over the next few weeks. That will shake out in a camp competition. And also a lot of competition going on in the secondary. Heard from defensive backs coach Evan Cooper talking about how he's cross-training all these guys. And yeah, we heard that in the spring a little bit too, but it's a little bit more real once you get into the fall. You've got a certain number of guys who you want to get ready for these spots. And he said, hey, if Malcolm Hartzog, a guy who's in all likelihood going to start at corner, if he needs him at safety, he wants him to get ready, get back out there and do what's needed. Also a lot of praise today for Tommy Hill, a guy we've heard a lot from. Matt Rule mentioned him last weekend as well, about a guy who's impressed. So looking forward to seeing what he can do in their secondary as well. Competition intense so far, and again, some more spots to be settled there, but it seems like based on everything Cooper says, these guys are competing and finding the different spots. That'll settle out in the next couple weeks, but a lot of more action. We got more open practice, so make sure to stay tuned. JournalStar.com tomorrow. We'll also hear from Matt Rule and offensive line coach Donovan Raiola. So stay tuned. And thanks for watching today's Four Downs.